Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
I love that speech.
Yeah, it's good.
What do you think of it?
Well, that ethos was what lifted up Sylvester Stallone to stardom very rapidly with his first movie. And what do I think about that? I think that young people are literally dying for that message. I mean literally, they're so demoralized. It's just beyond belief. And so one of the things that's been painful about what I've been doing with my wife as we've traveled around the world for the last number of years is to see how desperate people are for an encouraging word.
This idea that actually your life is defined not so much by success, because you're everyone's friend when you're successful, but by the knocks you inevitably are going to get, whether it's through losing loved ones, losing a job, losing a car, whatever it may be. You're going to get hit by blows in your life of differing magnitude. And I've always believed that how you deal with the downside of life really defines how you lead the rest of your life.
Well, the clip is very interesting because it starts out with the admission that life is brutally difficult and sometimes unbearably brutally difficult. And you can see the progressives playing with that notion. It's warped into this sense of victimization, but it does reflect some understanding of the underlying tragic reality of life. And so it's good to get that right out on the table to begin with. Say, well, you're miserable, you have your reasons. And they might be deep reasons. But if you let the misery demoralize you and make you bitter and cynical and cowardly and make you withdraw, then first of all, that's a failure in the highest sense on your part, and all it's going to do is make everything worse. And then you might think, well, what do you have to respond to that? How do you respond to that catastrophe and challenge? And the answer is, and this is what Rocky is telling his son in no uncertain terms, is like, terrible as things are, there's a lot more to you than you can possibly imagine. And that if you face those things forthrightly and with some faith and courage, then you can have the adventure of your life and prevent.
Stopping it there, and welcome to Mika Reaction Reviews, where we react and review to things on the internet. And today we're returning with Dr. Peterson. This interview, Uncensored Piers Morgan interview, was released, I believe, less than 24 hours ago, and it's kind of blown up. It's going viral. So I decided to take the best pieces that I loved from the interview and react to it. The interview itself was 45 minutes long, and it talked about a long range of things. So if you want the clip to the full interview, just ask, and I'll be happy to give it to you. But I started this from the Sylvester Stallone monologue when he was talking to his son, and I just absolutely loved that freaking speech because it is true. It's not about getting knocked down, it's about how many times you can get back up. Because life isn't fair. Life is fucking hard as hell. Life is full of suffering, and if you cannot build up the stoicism and the tenacity and the perseverance to get through it, you're going to crumble. And when you are demoralized, it's easy to allow that to happen. It's easy to allow yourself to fall into a victim mindset, right? I just love that message because it matches a lot of what Dr. Jordan Peterson preaches all the fucking time. And as someone who was severely abused as a child and assaulted multiple times and did it as a kid and have gone and really faced the biggest monsters of my life, running away from home and just beating all the odds. Statistically speaking, according to the data, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to repeat the history of abuse. I'm supposed to get back into an abusive relationship. I'm supposed to be a drug addict or in jail or in prison. But I'm not doing those things because I didn't allow myself to fall into this sort of victim mentality that so many young people find themselves in today. And like Sylvester Stallone said, if you go around going, it's their fault, it's her fault, it's his fault, it's the system's fault, then you're never going to take the power back to create the life that you want. I can tell you, living in victimhood mindset or being demoralized will only destroy your own life. You would only deconstruct inside out. And so I just absolutely love it. And I love how Dr. Jordan Peterson even hit on the fact that if you allow yourself to allow the world to turn you into a victim, that is a failure on your part. And I would add, even if you have done it before, and even if you're doing it now, even if you have failed multiple times, it's never too late to get back up and try again. Even if you never get the thing that you really desire in life, at least on your deathbed, you can know that you went down fighting, that you tried all your might to create the life that you want, to be the person that you know you can be to yourself and to the people around you and to your community. Because you can tell yourself all day, every day, it's not me, it's them. But I think in your quiet time, you know if you've given up. You know if you didn't try. You know if you allowed all the negativity to compound and break you down. But if you keep pushing through it, when you get to where you want to be, it's gonna feel so much more rewarding because you know what you fucking went through and fought through to get there. I think the downfall to a lot of this sort of emotional progressive wokeism, where it's sort of this coddle culture and safe space, is they're not allowing people to realize that you have the tools and you have the power within you to create the life that you want or to fight through those obstacles. They tend to make you feel like you are powerless. You are powerless against the system, you are powerless against life itself, and they are almost defanging you. They're almost like taking your tools away from you and going, it's okay, just come here and we'll coddle you and give you hugs and pity, give you a pity party. And that is just so damaging and just destructive to the individual. Even if the people who are doing it think they're doing the right thing. And I'm not saying don't have empathy. All right, let's continue.
Then you can have the adventure of your life and prevail even over catastrophe.
A conversation I had with Dr. Phil in America, where his explanation for it was that he said, you've got to understand that social media means that young people now are being bombarded all day long and all night long with quite shocking imagery all the time, of quite unsettling and shocking imagery. What do you think of that theory? And I think that in itself was adding to a sense of everything's terrible.
Well, I think it's a corollary of an information overload theory, right? I mean, one of the advantages to having the computational power we have is that everything is at your fingertips. And the disadvantage is that everything's in your face. And by everything, it might be 40 million pornographic images. Like, that's a lot. Or an endless array of tragic scenarios. And really endless. And so that's a problem. And the fundamental problem is, how do you handle the fire hose of information? And no one really knows the answer to that. But we should also point out that it's no wonder that young people are demoralized and anxious, because we're doing everything we can to demoralize them and make them anxious. So on the masculine front, we tell young boys that, well, the world's a terrible patriarchal tyranny, and all of that patriarchal tyranny, which is the whole explanation for history, has done nothing but oppress and exploit people and destroy the planet. And so that any manifestation of that masculine impulse on your part is equivalent to the world-destroying force.
Well, all masculinity now is branded toxic.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think the key moment for me came when Gillette, who'd always had these very masculine commercials with the big guy cuddling a baby or whatever it may be, they suddenly switched gears and did a campaign where it started with a lot of Me Too imagery and basically the assumption that all men are awful until they can prove otherwise. And I predicted in a column this would be a complete disaster for them. And sure enough, $9 billion later, they did a screeching U-turn and went back to the big guy cuddling the babies. Because actually, two things I think about that. One, most men are not awful, actually. And secondly,
not all the time.
No, some men are, obviously. Some women are pretty awful, but not most of them. But if you try saying that and not getting cancelled.
Stopping it there. The whole idea, historically men have ruled in this sort of authoritarian, patriarchal, totalitarian ways of oppression everyone besides other men, women of color, marginalized groups, and because of that we have to basically educate all men to make sure history doesn't repeat itself or something like that. It's all historically not true. Yes, the faces of a lot of leadership back then was men, but a lot of women were also involved in the tyranny and destruction of the past, the bloodshed of the past. There was a lot of women who were very supportive of slavery. There was a lot of women who were supportive of oppressing marginalized groups, right? But for some reason, historically, we always make it seem like it was just the men, and it's not really true. And historically, men and women have also gotten along just well, and they needed each other to survive. But right now, we're so divided by different mechanisms, by different groups, and by different tribes, all dividing, all pointing fingers. And it's just so sad, because when we can get along as men and women, yin and yang, feminine and masculine, it's a beautiful thing, and we can work together amazingly so. But there's so many people that profit off of the division, and it's really, really just destructive. All right, let's continue.
But I think also this thing that you've got into trouble about, which I don't understand why, that you believe that most women probably quite like their men to be strong and confident.
I don't believe that. All the data shows that clearly across cultural samples, and has for 50 years. Plus, everyone knows it.
Anecdotally, most women I know, I think, would absolutely agree. Why is it that you've been so vilified for suggesting something which is so palpably true?
Well, I think, first of all, that annoys narcissistic women no end. And it annoys people who think that there are no biological or cultural limits on how we manifest our behaviors. And also, it frightens a large number of women, because many women have never had a good relationship with anyone masculine in their life. And so the notion that they would need to establish a trusting relationship with a man, especially if he's also in something approximating a superordinate position, which is what they might like to find him maximally attractive, also implies that they're in some sense going to be under his sway. And if there's no trust there, well, that's absolutely terrifying. And I have some sympathy for that, because there are no shortage of women out there who've never had a positive relationship with anyone masculine. And so they're completely unable to discriminate between narcissistic power and compulsion and confident competence. And so because they can't distinguish that, and they're afraid, they put all of that in the same category, which is something like the predator category. And that's not good for them, because, well, as you said, all men aren't predators all the time.
All right, stopping it there. The one thing I love about Dr. Jordan Peterson is that he has a very well-rounded argument, and when he looks at the what's going on when it comes to the different sexes and relationships and coming together. I have noticed, because I did watch a couple of the Red Pill Manosphere reactions to this, and it kind of completely cut this part out of it. Interesting. But that he recognized some of the reasons why women will have a hard time trusting men who portray masculine traits, because in their past they've had negative relationships with men with those same traits, who manifested it in a negative or toxic manner, right? And I'm not talking about toxic masculinity, men who are more narcissistic or sociopathic, not psychopathic, that's sociopathic, unempathetic, and stuff like that. And I talked about this in my other video that I just did or reacted to, when he sat down with Ben Shapiro and talked about the crisis of masculinity, is that a lot of times when women are young, they don't recognize the differences when it comes to healthy, well-rounded masculinity. And I'm not talking about feminized masculinity, I'm just talking about healthy, well-rounded masculinity, and masculinity that's maybe immature, right? Maybe that's a better word. Immature, narcissistic, egotistical sort of types of masculinity, and they have a bad experience with that because they didn't recognize the signs of that, and they got into a relationship with those people, and then they got hurt or burned, and now they're scared of that masculine power that men possess, but they can't recognize that it can be used for good, as a good force. And biologically speaking, we evolved to be attracted to that. And of course that's compounded on the fact when feminism says, like, see, yeah, like all men are like this. We all have this lived experience of having these bad experiences with men. Therefore, it must be all men. But the red pill does it the same. The red pill does the same thing. You know, the manosphere, red pill side of the manosphere on social media platforms, where it's like they'll pick the worst type of women's, they will give these anecdotal stories, and because a lot of men have experience in these anecdotal toxic relationships with women, they would just assume it must be all women, whereas like, no, not all women are bad and not all men are bad, but you have these two tribes sort of keep regurgitating the same stuff to their followers or their platform or their subscribers and their viewers and their listeners, and then you're just getting people stuck in this idea that everyone is out to get you, everyone is, you know, where this is a competition, every woman is trying to finesse you, every man is trying to control you, and it's not true. And also, unfortunately, a lot of women, I think the statistics is pretty much a lot of women when they're young have unfortunately bad experiences with males. It's usually a male family member getting diddled, getting molested, getting assaulted. It happens. And so that's also a thing that women carry with them when it comes to being scared of masculinity, right? But again, you can't project or you can't punish all men for past men's mistakes. I've also been assaulted, I've also been diddled, and there was a time where I wanted to hate all men, and I had to realize if I want to have a healthy relationship with a guy, I have to let that go and not punish men for all the things that happened to me, because it wasn't them. It was the single men who did those two things to me. It wasn't all men. But that takes maturity, and that takes time, and that takes learning and unlearning and all those things. But anyway, let's continue.
I've got to wrap it up. I don't want to, but I have to. I want to ask you just quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people?
Sure. Why not? You know, people have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about it.
Well, God, you know, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, like, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like, they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them. It's really something to see constantly. How many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word. You're a net force for good if you want to be.
Do you believe you're a net force for good?
Net, yes. In all the details, probably not. You know, no one's perfect. So people make their mistakes as they stumble uphill.
People make their mistakes as they stumble uphill. I love that because it is anti-victim mentality. You keep going, you keep striving, you keep trying, you keep pushing to create the life you want to become, the person you want to be, and you will make a lot of mistakes on in the process, but that doesn't mean you give up. You know, maybe you pivot, maybe you learn, maybe you educate yourself more, but you don't give up. And as long as you are going in that direction, as long as you're going uphill, then stumble. That's the part of the progress. You know, that's part of the process, right? I love how Dr. Jordan Peterson has so much empathy for people, and he's quite like, he's not like your average manosphere guy who tend to be very rah rah rah, tough tough tough, alpha alpha alpha. He has a very masculine part of himself. He is, you know, demanding and masculine, and his intelligence is so attractive and sexy. But he does have a really like empathetic, soft, and he's even said in his own words, feminine sort of emotional side to him, where he has that yin and yang almost within himself, where he can be empathetic but also command things and also tell the truth and also stick up for what's right. And I absolutely love that about Dr. Jordan Peterson. He used the word marginalized. Marginalized does not mean victim. Because again, I see a lot of people who are saying they're in these marginalized groups then victimize themselves and become victim mentality, victim culture, victim groups. That is not the same thing as being marginalized and not being a victim. Because if you're a victim, you would never make that track uphill to even make those stumbles that he spoke about. Anyway, Olivia Wilde is trash for calling Dr. Jordan Peterson the king of incels. And again, like he will welcome that. He welcomes being a representative of disenfranchised or demoralized young men who need direction. But he's not an incel, first of all, because he's married with children. And second of all, even his statement of saying, yeah, women, act for higher standards, have high standards, go for it. That's not something that the red pill or the incel community would ever say, because they say women are delusional and they need to lower their standards. So he completely talks the opposite of what the, again, red pill and incel rhetoric is. But I think his rhetoric, his message, his intellect is way better to gravitate towards than other people's, who's, I think it is in it for more of gaining followers, fame, and money. Not gonna name any names. Anyway, guys, tell me what you think of this video. I very much enjoyed it. Again, if you want to see the entire clip, you can either go search for it on YouTube or ask me for the clip, and I'll be happy to give it to you. You guys have an amazing day. Let me know what you guys think of all of this, what I said, what they said in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell to get the notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal me link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course, it helps me. You don't have to. You can just like, comment, subscribe. Another great way to support this channel is either join my brand membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or you can visit my brand new merch shop. Links down below and links to all of the alternative platforms I'm on. My socials, including my Twitter, other ways to support me and other ways to contact me for business is always in the links down below. And if you like, you can super things. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle. I live abroad. If you'd like to know where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Hit the link. Go subscribe to my travel vlog channel and or follow me on my travel Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date. And I also have all of my YouTube channels, all my alternative platforms, all my socials, all in the links down below. Go follow, go support, go subscribe, and you guys have an amazing day.